everyone, I'm Rachel Poli with Ari Meghlen, and we're your hosts for the Merry Writer podcast. Unfortunately, we are not on episode 666. If we were, it would be horror themed, but today is not this day. We are on episode 66, and this week's question is, how do you stay motivated when writing? Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening so you never miss a show. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like. So how exactly do you stay motivated when writing? I guess you can look at this question two different ways, and I'm going to talk about it both ways. How do you stay motivated during a single writing session, or how do you stay motivated when writing in general? Like, how do you not flip back and forth between multiple novels? Flip between multiple novels, it's fine. You can totally handle it. No worries there.
I do feel like I was being called out then. Personally attacked right now.
No, I do the same thing. I have like 1,200 different novels going at once. None of them are finished. I mean, are we surprised? Absolutely not.
Aren't we great for using this as an episode? Like, listen to what we say while we don't do it ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, really, we remind you guys to take our words with a grain of salt. So there we go. I'm going to go ahead and talk about staying motivated during a writing session for my first point. And what I do is I race the clock. And I don't know why, but this works really well for me. I sit there and I say, okay, it's 10 o'clock on the dot. I'm going to see how many words I can write within the next 10 minutes or within the next 20 minutes, 30 minutes, hour, whatever. And that usually works for me, especially during the NaNoWriMo months. I can sit there and just bang out a couple thousand words in, one sitting. And is it good? Probably not, but it gets me writing and it gets the ideas flowing and it just works for me. And that's all I really have to say about that.
I have to say that would never work for me. I would be too obsessed with the clock watching. So, although I have managed to is it the Pomodoro technique with the 25 minutes? Mainly because I'd probably spend the first 10 minutes thinking about the fact there's a clock, and then the next 5 minutes slowly forgetting there was a clock, and then I might get another 5 or 10 minutes in if I'm lucky. So what I do for staying motivated while in a writing session, especially because I find the starting is hard. I always find that starting is hard. It's inertia. You literally have to push forward. So what I will do is I will read something else within that manuscript. So I'll open my Scrivener and then I'll go to the scene before that I wrote or the scene after that I wrote. Because remember, I do not write linearly. I jump all over the place and I write in scenes, not chapters. So I will pick one of my favorite scenes or something I've been really happy with how it came out, and I will reread that, and it kind of kickstarts the sensation of being in that world and reconnecting with these characters. And then when I go back to the empty blank page, ready, it's usually easier. I also have a vague idea of what I'm going to be writing for each scene, because I actually do outline now. Yay! So I do know what I will be writing most of the time. But even with that, the inertia does take a little bit of time. So yeah, I like to reread my work within the manuscript to kind of spark it. That's what it does. It sparks the enjoyment of it. Not that I don't enjoy it, but sometimes it just needs a bit of, warming up. And then I can usually go to that blank page and start that scene and get as much written out as possible. That's how I manage to stay motivated. I'm going to add a little caveat. If it's a boring scene, and obviously this, the whole point is there shouldn't be boring scenes, but if you're literally writing, the very next thing to come in the manuscript is a bit of description or something that doesn't really grab you as much as something else, like an action scene. If I'm really struggling, I will bounce to that action scene or to that dialogue that's really tense. I don't recommend doing that all the time because you'll end up with a lot of scenes with really, really intense stuff. And then you're going to have an awful lot of time putting in those threads that tie it all together that's just not as interesting. You're describing a few things, you're moving people from one place to the other, not as gripping. And that's a lot of less interesting to do in one space. So don't do it all the time, but it is a good one if you're really struggling.
I'm going to bounce off of that for a second and agree with you with the whole inertia thing. Like, I don't reread my work ever, really. I don't know why. I just kind of pick up where I leave off and just go with it. But it is true that you need to have that little, you got to warm it up first, and you really got to get going before you can start sailing with it. And for me, that's dialogue. And I think that's a lot of times when I race the clock, those scenes or chapters or whatever I'm currently writing is very heavily dialogue based, because that's easier for me to write than description. And my dialogue has always flowed well. It's, always been one of my strong suits when it comes to writing. And that's what always has worked for me. So if you really are stuck on something, I agree, like go to more of a preferred scene, but also gravitate towards something that comes more naturally for you. Like, I know some people struggle with dialogue, but they excel at description, and you can just roll with it from there. Get that spark going and just set sail, or let the flames go. I'm using like 6 different metaphors at once right now.
It works. Just go with it.
But I'm gonna turn the tables for a second, and instead of talking about a single writing session, I want to talk about staying motivated with, just continuing your novel or novels in general. Because for me personally, I've been working on my mystery series for over 10 years, and yes, it's awful, but I'm still writing it. I mean, that's got to count for something. But how exactly do you stay motivated to write the same book for months at a time or years at a time, or, however long it takes you? And for me, I find other things to do that inspire my novels, which I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but my mystery series was heavily inspired by a video game called Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. So a lot of times when I want to work on my novels, but I'm not quite ready to sit down for a writing session, I will sometimes watch a mystery or detective show like Psych. That's one of my favorite shows. Or I'll sit down and play Ace Attorney, or there's another mystery puzzle game called Professor Layton that I'll play. And there's all these different kinds of things. And usually when I sit down and I play those games, or I watch these movies or TV shows or whatever, I'll sit there for like an hour or so, and all of a sudden my brain will be like, you need to go write, and you need to go continue your mystery book, and you need to write something brilliant like this. And usually that gets me up and going. Do I finish the TV show first? Of course I do, even though I've seen it thousands of times. But I will eventually go write, and it works.
I have to admit, I love that. Whenever I'm really stuck, not with the story, but I said with the motivation, I will watch movies that are in the genre. So because I write, I write traditional fantasy and urban preternatural fantasy. So obviously, if I'm feeling a bit stuck with my urban preternatural fantasy, I will watch shows like Grimm or Supernatural, and you never need an excuse for watching either of those because they're awesome. And if I'm obviously struggling with my motivation for my traditional fantasy, I will put on movies like Willow or Lord of the Rings or anything with a dragon in it, even though I don't even think my story has dragons in it, but it's always good to put anything with dragons on. That's the sort of thing I will watch. And I do usually find I'll need to have a pad and pen with me, because it will trigger concepts and ideas for the story, or dialogue pieces for the characters. It'll inspire concepts for my story, or inspire dialogue for the characters, or even just like, some random idea that I'm thinking, oh, this character needs a tattoo, and that just, that isn't even like I'm watching a movie and the character's got a tattoo and I'm like, yeah, one of my characters needs a tattoo. It's just the act of watching something that's inspiring, and it gives the old inspirational well a poke. Can you poke a well? I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to bounce off that. Just so you know, we haven't recorded a podcast in ages because we caught up and like we like to record several at once and get like well ahead. This is the second one we've done in like 4 weeks. So we're a little bit rusty.
Go ahead, blow all of our secrets, Ari.
Okay, because this is your episode, so you have to edit it.
I know. It's staying in.
But I'm going to bounce off the point. To stay, what I do to stay motivated for writing in general is I'm a very visual person. So if I'm really struggling just in general, I will create visuals. I will be making aesthetics. I will be spending way too long on Pinterest looking at landscapes. Anything like that can kind of give me a visual image that, again, draws me into the story. All I can do is find a castle that's perfect for one of my characters, and it's like, whew, perfect. Said perfect too many times, very annoying. And I find that works with a lot of people. And if visual isn't your thing, you're not a very visual person, maybe audio is. So create playlists, listen to songs that give you ideas or that feel perfect for characters or locations or for the story for the story overall. Things like that are just other ways to kind of get you in sync with your writing. And especially with things like the audio, you can put that on, and then if it does get you inspired, you can play it while you're writing, or even if it's really low, if you're not someone who likes noise when you're writing, just put it really low, or do it while you're brainstorming, and that can actually end up as a trigger. Same with a visual, print some of those pictures out, plaster them all over your wall, right behind your computer, so you can see them when you look up, stick them on the ceiling, and it just kind of, well, it does for me, it kind of kickstarts the excitement to get back into writing. So yeah, that's my point. Randomly.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. A lot of times when I'm writing my mystery, I listen to the Ace Attorney soundtrack, and those courtroom scene music, they really get me going. And a lot of times, like, those songs will come on when I'm writing a certain scene that it just fits, and I'm just bopping in my seat, like trying to write, and it's great. And the other thing you can do is you can make soundtracks for your what are we doing? We're writing. You can make soundtracks for your novels. And you can even listen to those too, so that you can associate these certain songs with your book. And then whenever you hear the song, you'll just suddenly get the urge to write, even if you're driving down on the highway. Don't write while you're driving, unless it's like speech to text. But even then, that's I'm just not going to say anything else. Don't listen to me, guys.
Safety first.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Right. You make sure you have someone in the passenger seat, and then scream at them to get out a pen and pad and to write everything you say fast.
Yes, exactly. Get a waterproof notepad for the shower. There you go.
I haven't managed that yet. I usually just go, just remember it, and then I come out with like maybe 20% of what I was thinking. Although I have shouted to my partner to write stuff down while I'm screaming through the door, some of the points, and then he sends me a text with it.
That's fair. I think with that said, I think we've said all we can about staying motivated when, you have a writing session or just for writing your books in general. So if you're in the middle of a writing session and you feel like you're starting to slow down, just try to pace yourself and race the clock a little bit. I feel like that instant deadline can really, pressure you to write something, even if it's not that good. That's what editing's for. Don't worry about it. You could always reread your work, or you can jump around to a different scene or chapter or a more, preferable scene, like an action scene or something like that. And if you find that you haven't written in a really long time and you're trying to get that motivation back, you can find other things to do that inspire your novels, such as watching movies in your genre or playing video games. And you can also make aesthetics, like just create your own makeshift book cover or create playlists to listen to or soundtracks for your book and anything else you can think of. So we hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and do let us know how you stay motivated when writing in the comments or on Twitter using the hashtag The Merry Writer Podcast. And if you want to get some extra content, you can head on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/The Merry Writer Podcast. You can support the show, and for as little as $1 a month, get extra bonus content, including mini episodes. So tune in next week for another episode of the May Writer Podcast, where we ask all the right questions. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
This podcast is brought to you by Scribbled Notes. Our handwriting is awful. The music titled Inspired is by Kevin Meghlen.